it's LyndaCreates from LyndaCreates, and I use the Festive Collage stamp by Tim Holtz for Stampers Anonymous. So this is where I get to play with the other fibers. I mean, I have, oh, and I found something else too. I found some old lace. Look at this vintage lace that I had. But there's these shredded parts. Oh, let me move this so you can see it. Look at these shredded parts. That's going to be lovely somewhere on this. I pulled out some Christmas colored fibers that I have, and some of these, some of this is thrifted, and then this is, back in the old days, Basic Gray used to have fibers. 2005, I believe. 2005, they had fibers to match their paper pads. So I have that. I'm going to put them together, see what I get. I have the random greens from, what did I say, Basic Gray and EK Success. So I'm just going to play with where I want these. I could take my needles out. This is my sewing box that I made. I think I should leave needles on this top fiber fabric because I'm not sure how much of that got held down. Oh, and another thing I want to share too, I have all this, is that the final goal is to put it on, or on a, stretch it on board. This is an 8-inch square painting canvas that you could get very inexpensively on Amazon. And I'm going to remove this canvas, and then I'm going to stretch this onto it. So before I put all the embellishing parts, I need to remove this canvas. So let me go ahead and do that. The good thing about these, it's an inexpensive way to get stretcher bars. See the wooden, you want to make sure there are wooden stretcher bars in there. And because they think you're going to use it for painting, it's relatively cheap. So what you need is a flathead screwdriver. And I'm just going to go around and lift up the staples in the corner first. Keep your hand away from that. And they're really strong staples. And I highly recommend you keep track of where they go because they are sharp. And then a pair of pliers. And you just pull them out. Okay, but like I said, you want to keep track of where they go, because especially if you have little kids or dogs, or even your own feet, you don't want to step on any of these. I have them all loosened up. So now when you have that all unstapled, it just comes off so easily. Now, this is painter's canvas. It's inexpensive, it's not the best quality, and it's already treated with gesso, so it takes paint. It's not like regular fabric. It doesn't mean you can't stitch through it. Not sure what I plan to do with it, but I've been keeping them just in case. So, oops, hold on. Having done that, I have a lot of gesso on my desk. So now you have your frame. It's actually your stretcher board. So I'm going to, like I said, I'm going to stretch this on there. But before I do that, I want to add some pieces. Let me go ahead and do that. Definitely want bits of this shredded lace. So perfect. Look, you can even tear it apart. And because it is vintage, I don't even have to tea dye it. has a slight coloring to it. Here. And now I want to add some fibers, not too much. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to do it this way. It sort of visually frames where you're going to be working, what you're going to be doing, and what you need to add, and don't waste any fibers where you're not going to be able to see it. I don't know if I want to do, so I'm just going to play with the fibers for a few seconds here. I was debating whether to add some red. Will it take away from the flowers? I have something laying on my lap here that may need to go in here somewhere. So I'm just going to keep playing for just a little bit longer, and I'll come back when I have my decision made. Okay, I think that's how I want it. I had to trim off a little bit of this background fabric off the top so that the edge would show. I'm going to stitch it down so it doesn't lift up. Then I'll stitch down the lace. And I think these are the colors I'm going to go with. And I will just couch those down. So here's where this fun slow stitching part comes in. And I chose a very neutral floss, DMC 543, because I'm adding some fibers later, and I didn't want to detract from all of the other textures. So I'm keeping it a very neutral color, and I'm just going to stitch around the outer shapes to hold them in place and actually hold the lace down as well. So I tied a knot in it, so I'm going to start back in here in the middle layer, so if you look in the back you won't see this knot. Although I'm using a neutral color, I am using 6 strands, so I'm going to have to do some bigger stitches, and the reason I'm doing 6 strands is although the color is very neutral, I do want to show off the fact that there is stitching going on. I'm just going to do a running stitch, hold the lace and the fabric and back in place. I'm going to pick this up. I think with the running stitch it's just easier. I was kind of doing it down there for the camera, but realized the camera can pick it up from here. I took my thimble off and I think I need to put it back on. I didn't want the lace, although I love it, I didn't want it to cover up the stamped parts too much, so I pulled it off to the side. I'll probably need to go back in some of this lace because it is so shredded. I'll have to stitch it down on the outer part. And here's a little trick. When you lay out, you lay all your fibers and your fabric out, and then you could either pin it, which with fabric you can do it easily, but when you're laying out fibers, they tend to fall off, of course, because they're just sitting there. I always take a quick photo with my phone, so I can go back as a reference once I move the fibers, so I know where they were. I don't know, some people may have a much better memory than I do. And I'm using, again, because I'm using 6 strands, I'm using a larger needle, and it is a little harder to go through these finer woven fabrics, which is why it goes better if I go straight out to the side there with my left hand. Once again, ambidextrous stitching. Okay, so you can see it's just adding a stitch to hold everything in place. It's not standing out too much, but yet you could tell it's a stitch. So I finished stitching all the way around the center cotton piece. I am starting now on this outer edge. So I'm going to stitch down this partially to keep it in place and partially so it doesn't completely unravel off my page. But this is the part that is so relaxing, and once you kind of have an idea of where you're going and how you want to get there, it's just a matter of pulling the floss through. The only stress I have at the moment actually is my dog. We just had the time change. The clocks went back an hour, but I always say we haven't been able to figure out how to reset the dog alarm. So she believes that it is definitely time for lunch and a walk, and well, she just walked away, but she's checked her bowl. It's empty. So, okay. So if I stop suddenly, you'll know why. I just want to get this little bit of stitching down just to take most of the pins off. I think that's it for the loose couching. I'm going to try to tie the knot underneath. I may have to actually take it in back on this one. Do 2 tiny stitches in place. It works as a knot. Okay, so I have that part done. These are held in place. Now I'm going to, like I said, I did take a photo of it, so I'll check it again to make sure I know where I'm going to couch these pieces down, but it's going to be something like that, and the frame will go something like that, and I'm sure these will spread out more, so I'll just keep working. Oh, but first I have to take my dog out. So I have the fibers where I want it, and I just have the frame work around it so that I could see where I'm going to go off the edges and where I'm concentrating to make sure everything stays, the fibers stay on. So I have a single piece of floss on my needle, and it is, again, I'm going to do this pale off-white color because it's neutral and it won't, I may change it for the thicker, really thicker, but I'm hoping it will just hold everything down without being really obvious. That's my goal. So again, let me check something. The other thing I'm watching for is that the fabric will wrap around the outer edges, so I cut it, I hope I cut it so that it goes off, and I don't necessarily want to have it go straight across, so I kind of just played with laying it in there and seeing how it laid across. I'm just going to go ahead and start, and it never hurts to check twice. Okay, so I'm going to start way out here. Well, I don't know, I might cut some of the fabric off on the edge, so I better not go too far off the edge. After doing the thicker fabric, this is so easy to stitch. So now I am going to just do some couching, which is just like I did on the stem, just catching the fibers slightly as I go. And what I'm also going to do is probably go around the lace and hold that down in place. I'm only trying to couch down this very thin reddish green piece. And although I have it somewhat tacked in place, it is a very loose pattern because I'm not sure where it's going to end up. Okay, so I'm not cooperating really well with the thicker green, and I kind of know where I want it to go, and it's going to go under here. So let's just check this again. Okay, so what I'm going to do too is I'm going to pin this out of on the side so it doesn't get caught up. Just wanting to make sure we're going along. And you could barely see the couching, so I like that. Now, so I have that down. Now I can go take this one. So maybe before I put that one on, I'm going to do one of the verticals. Okay, so let me end this stitch. So now I have one going across the bottom. Let me take this off. I'll have one more going off that way, and then I'll have, so it'll look something like that. Okay, I know. I'm going to take this for now. Okay, so let's do this green along the bottom. And this gives me the opportunity to make it very wavy, which this one came out rather straight, so now this piece of fiber it's like more like a ribbon in that it can be very flat. So I'm going to take some care to make sure it doesn't lay flat, that it curves and folds on itself, because I think that's much more interesting. I think it's really, if you're a paper crafter new to the fiber crafting world, I have to say I find it extremely ironic that the basic gray fibers they came out with, I don't even know what year that might have been, probably at least a decade ago, that I found a way to use it. To be honest, I love them so much that I just stashed them away and kept them for something, and it's nice to see that I finally found what that something is. Now I still have a little bit of floss on here, so maybe what I'll do is, before I do that last piece of green, I'll stitch down over here where I have needles still on here. I know I don't have a lot of floss, but at least I could get a little bit of use out of this. And I'm just going to, again with the same single floss, I'm just going to go around and do a little running stitch wherever I have these pins. So there's something very soothing about doing a running stitch like this. Okay, so I'm just going to do this lace down here. I'm going to make it a little peekaboo hole so you could see the leaf underneath. And I'm sure I thrifted this lace probably from an estate sale years ago. That was so much fun to find in my box of lace. So I'm just going across the surface just to tack it down. Yes, I think everything's tacked down. Okay, I like the way that turned out. Now, I'm just going to attach it to my frame. So, I'm going to turn it over. I have, ta-da, a little staple gun. And this was also a thrift find. When you have just one staple in there, that's the time to make sure everything's straight. Left, right, front, center. Okay, so now I'm pulling it. Okay, so now that I have one going in that direction, I will pull equally on both sides, just to show you. And then staple that side, pull it tight. Okay. Now I'm just going to continue around, pulling tightly as I go. Okay, so now what I saw on the fabric that I took off, the canvas that I took off, they had cut the corners. Let's do it this way. You can kind of see. This is a canvas that came off. I'm just going to take a piece of it. And see how they cut it. Okay, so well, let's try before we cut all the corners this way. That's not too bad. Okay, this piece over. Cutting angles like they had, or at least trying to be close. Okay, so I see one of the things, the center, this piece right here, a little longer. Oh, that was a much cleaner corner. Okay, little practice, but getting better. So I have all the corners finished. I'm going to go back and fill in a little bit of these spots that are a little loose. So just to make sure everything holds together. It's almost done. I just want to clean up the back a little bit. This was a stitcher stamp project using the Festive Collage stamp from Tim Holtz. And I just had a blast doing this with some thrifted fabrics and vintage lace, and used just a few stitches and a couple of beads to make this. So I hope you try this. It is such a simple way to embellish your stamps and make something that's really unique. So please check out my website, LyndaCreates, that's Lynda with the Y, L-Y-N-D-A, LyndaCreates.com for more inspiration. I hope you enjoyed that. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in my next video. Bye!